I have calls to action, obviously, and everything.
Mhm.
Um,
When did it
but
take off? Like, I mean, you've had
it's
how many episodes now? Like, golly,
550 now, and I just hit 700,000 downloads actually over the weekend.
700,000 downloads.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Goals 1 million by the end of this year. So it was like, I would say it ramped up by year 3. I was hitting anywhere between 8 to 12,000 listens or downloads per month. And
Mhm.
then when I crept into like halfway through year 3, rolling into year 4, that's when it started to get to like 15 to 20,000. And now, there's some months where I hit 40, but average I would say is 25 to 35,000 per month.
Nice. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Way to stick to it. I'm sure you had an optimization process as you went that all
It's
visionaries can learn from.
consistency, and I showcase it. So it's like I post it's always on YouTube, it's Instagram. Like, you know, the only way that people will find out about what you're doing is if you tell them what you're doing. So, and I use my community as a way to kind of shout myself out. Like when I hit
Mhm.
the 700,000 downloads, I made a post about it, and some people are like, "Oh, I'm definitely going to take a listen now." So it's like the social proof and
Yes.
credibility. People are looking for that, but it
I
took it
like
took a
that.
while.
I like that you appreciate the tactic, but you don't glorify it.
Yeah,
There's a difference. It's like we all learned how to say please and thank you. That doesn't make us
right.
bad people
No,
because we
not at
learned
all.
the tactic. And so some people are kind of like, I think there's like a phase going through industries where people are worried that, oh man, if I'm principally driven, I won't use tactics. And it's no, the tactics aren't the problem. It's how we use the resource, right? That's the challenge. So speaking of, I'd love to know for our audience, what are 3 resources or 3 books that you'd recommend any visionary pick up and learn from?
Um, so there's a it's funny. My wife and I, whenever someone joins our mastermind, um, number one, uh, we give them a little mug, but we also give people 3 books that we love, and
Hmm.
3 of our favorites right now. Number one is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Waddles. I think it's just such a, even though the book was written like 115 years ago,
Those are the best.
all the money mindset is such a big thing. Everything has been predicated from the teachings of that book. Any money mindset book you have ever read is based on that book, every single one. And there are so many nuggets that you can pull out from that book. But I would say the big thing for me is when Wallace talks about living in a world of creation and collaboration instead of a world of competition and comparison. Um, the
Love it.
second book I would say is Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller.
Hmm.
He's a genius. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Like, he is the foremost, I would say, leader in marketing. And what I love about that book, it goes over. It's like a $15,000 book that he charges $25 for, because he gives you the keys to the castle. The benchmark of having 7,500 emails to, making sure. And I love the concept of how he builds everything out with the airplane, and the fuselage is represented, the wings are represented, the engines are represented. That's your marketing, your sales, all that stuff. For anyone that wants to learn how to properly market your business, that book is a must. And the third one is something more recently. It's not a recent book, but it crept into my life and my wife's life, and that is The War of Art, um, by Stephen Pressfield. And that book is just, hands down, it's just one giant, like, great slap in the face, because he talks about the difference between an amateur in business and an expert in business, and the habits that amateurs have when they're going about business and the habits that experts have and being a professional. The other thing he talks about, which is really important, is the law of resistance. And he says, amateurs fade away and run away from resistance, where professionals and experts lean right into it because they know that the path to least resistance is leaning into resistance to get on the other side of it. So I would say those 3 books foundationally are just amazing, and I recommend them for everyone.
Those are phenomenal resources, 2 of which are new to me, and I'm excited about that. I like old school books, especially because you can see how has the principle withstood the test of time, right? Which is, I don't think everybody wrote their financial book or their growth book with that book in mind, but again, because you can see like, wow, this hit all of the same things on the head. It's like As a Man Thinketh, the book by James Allen. It's like every motivational book you find right now that's pure and good, you will find those same concepts in that exact same book. So that's awesome. Thank you for that. I'm also really happy to hear that about Donald Miller. I've been a distant fan of Donald Miller, and I came across a string of people who did not get great results with what he does. And at the same time, we have to remember, visionaries, that it's not the teacher's job for the student to pass the test, right? It is the teacher's there to provide the materials, but sometimes we're going to have people who aren't able to pick up what we're putting down. And that was great. And The War of Art. I'm going to look that up.
I mean, you will love that book.
Well, I'm a guy that dives into resistance, and I've been met with plenty of people who are very offended by that. Or very, like, why don't you calm down? Why don't you go the easy route? Basically.
Right.
And I love you. That's not my route. We keep going. So well said. All right, we'll go to the break. We'll be right back, and we'll dive into Scott Aaron's vision of living your legacy now. All right, welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We'll be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business. And I am so excited to have fellow podcast host, but mountain of a man in a show compared to my show, Scott Aaron, whose show, Networking and Marketing Made Simple, has 123 reviews on Apple. He's got a couple hundred, 554 episodes laid down to help you with your growth. And I can't wait to bring him on stage. We're actually going to be talking about the vision beyond the podcast as well. And that's one of the greatest blessings we can gain, visionaries, from other visionaries, is knowing how are they going about their success, right? What's going on behind the scenes? There's so many people who go down a path of success and regret it because they gave up so much to get there, and they don't want to talk about those things. On the flip side, there's other leaders who are rising up, and thanks to books like As a Man Thinketh or The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and beyond, they're realizing that, you know what, maybe we can have our cake and eat it too, even though past generations didn't think so. So lots of opportunity there. We'll dive in. We'll bring him on in just a minute. Before I do that, I want to point out a couple of our sponsors, people and entities that we support tremendously, one of which being The Law Spot with Melissa Gray. Melissa came on the show. I was nervous to have her because a lot of lawyers are very pretentious. And so here she comes onto the show, and she's got this wonderful personality. She understands that legal does not have to be complicated. And she's somebody that was like, man, I want to hang out with this lady. I want to know more about how she goes about things. And I have been so guilty of years past, not only not seeking the legal counsel I need, but also working with, I would say 95% of the more than 1,000 companies that I've consulted when I worked with did not have any legal counsel on staff. And that's dangerous in the world of business. So I'm not here to scare you on that. I'm hoping you learn from my $20,000 lawsuit regarding our trademark at Restaurant Connect. I'm hoping you learn from the distributors or the clients who send you chargebacks and you don't know what to do with that, or when Apple patents your software the way they patented ours, or right now, Vision Pros, man, I'm excited for Apple. I hope we don't get in a fight over that one. But their new product is stellar. It's so important that we protect our visions and have people to do that. I would just consider her in your lineup of people to interview as you look for how do you protect your brand and vision in the process. Then there's Directional Advisors with Franklin Parker. Franklin Parker worked in the home office ecosystem, meaning supporting an individual who is billionaire status and learning how to run finances and helping them with financial advice and how to scale wealth. Those individuals think at a completely different level than I'm going to say we do, right? I don't think too many billionaires are listening into this episode right now. So I always say until maybe once I've reached Jeff Bezos status, maybe once I've got the amount of money in my bank account that Bill Gates have, maybe then I'll claim to be a financial wizard and know exactly what to do with finances. Until then, I have got so much to learn, and he's a wealth of knowledge. He was also on the show. Feel free to check both those episodes out. And I will never, ever host this show without talking about the Water Project or some other similar cause, because there are billions of people in this world who need tremendous help. I'm so lucky to be able to get water anytime I want it. And there's millions of people who don't have that. The Water Project does an excellent job of showing us what they actually do with the funds that we provide them. You actually get to pick the project, kind of like a Kickstarter. You get to learn about it and see if they're building a sand dam or a borehole well. And you get to see that project come to fruition because they give you social media updates. Now, for me, this is an opportunity to realize that my dollar went towards helping generational impact. These are kids that get pulled out of school to go look for water that might not be safe for their families. These are parents who have to abandon work to do that. If you're not in a position to help financially, we understand that COVID economics has been hard on people. But if you are in the position to where you can at least share that or just tag somebody or say, hey, let's check this out. That's one way where you might be able to inspire somebody to make impact. Maybe they'll donate $100,000. Maybe they'll donate $1. I know it means a lot to those people. So without further ado, Scott Aaron, thank you so much for being on Vision Pros Live, man. It's an honor to host you.
Well, Jackson, grateful to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, sir. Diving right in. You know, you're doing so much for so many, 700,000 downloads. That's a lot of people, or your mom clicking a button a lot of times, right, to make sure that you're successful.
Probably a combination of the two.
Mine too, man. But with that, what is your vision for those that you serve?
To give people hope that nothing is impossible, and the life that they want to create, the impact that they want to have, the business that they want to create and scale is possible when you have that belief. And I think that's the thing. My wife and I believe so much in ourselves, and we believe so much in other people. We want them to have the same narrative about themselves. And I think it's just really shifting that mindset around to a mindset of growth instead of a mindset of lack, and realizing that everything is possible if you truly believe it is.
I love that. Law of attraction. I would call it the law of attraction, the law of the harvest. There's lots of different principles and laws that you're talking about as you mention the opportunity to serve. What is your vision for you? What do you see for yourself on the horizon?
Well, creating a clear vision is something that my wife and I truly believe in. And for me, my personal vision is continuing to have the work-life balance and work-life integration that my wife and I have strived very hard to create for ourselves. You know, we work 3 days a week right now, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and we give ourselves the other 4 days off or just as flex days to really focus on other things, because we believe in the principle of living more and working less, so you can spend more time with those that you want to spend with, when you want, how you want. And I think that's the big vision is continuing to work smarter and not harder, and enjoy every single day that we're given, because we hear the analogies all the time, and we hear the quotes that life is short, but it really is. And until you're smacked in the face with maybe a health ailment or a challenge or a problem, you know, you have to appreciate the days that we're given. And that is something that I really believe in. And my vision is continuing to show up each day very authentically, very genuinely as myself, and being a beacon of hope and also an example of what is possible. And just, again, leading by example. That's the whole thing. Nancy and I don't want just the success for us. That's why we're writing a book about it. That's why we do what we do. We want to blaze the trails for others. And we have as many seats available in our bus as possible. So all are welcome, and we want to see everybody achieve what they want.
I love that you're able to tie the principles of a book like The War of Art with the idea, the balance of the 4-hour work week, and the realization that, you don't have to grind to get there. Now, I think a lot of us misconstrue, what Gary Vaynerchuk's intentions are with the hustle and the grind. We don't know what it's like, a lot of us, to get out of the hood, right? To escape, a criminal warfare in Uganda, to have to give everything that we can to build a life for ourselves. I think sometimes the hustle and grind culture gets permanently embedded us, whether we need to do it or not. But I'd like to play devil's advocate a little bit, or give you a chance to, Scott. Do you think that the hustle and grind is required for certain circumstances in life, or that it never is? And how do you balance, again, a 3-day work week versus living your purpose? What can you help visionaries understand there? Because we all have a choice as entrepreneurs.
Well, I think there's always going to be a time in your business journey where you are working really hard. You're never going to just kind of cruise along. Depending upon, I would say, what phase of business that you're in. Are you pre-launch? Are you early stages? Are you looking to grow and scale? Are you established? So it really depends. And I think, Gary sometimes gets a bad rap for, promoting this hustle culture, which he's more recently kind of detached from. I think that was just a projection of where he was in his journey. And he was kind of projecting his journey of hustle to other people, and they kind of latched onto it. I think the more appropriate way to state it is, whenever you're looking to build something that's meaningful, that is your own, it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen overnight. My wife and I believe in the core principle of treating your business like a 401k and not like a lottery ticket. And the fact is that anything that we do is not get rich quick. It is that compounded effect. And there are certain times when you are in your business that there's going to be some long hours. There's going to be some trials and tribulations. But what I will say is, when the foundations are laid down, that is when the walls of your house can be built. That's when the windows can be installed. That's when the front door can be put on. And that's when the roof can be put over your head. But I think, depending upon what stage of business that you're in, it will require more of you at certain times. And then as you grow, like Nancy and I just hired a full-time COO. But it's, it's like, yeah, I mean, but it's 7 years later. So, it was just us all, like, in year 7, we hired our COO. So it's not like, it's not overnight. It's a process. And I think, slow and steady will always win the race. I have analogies for days. Like, I love the tortoise. I love the tortoise and the hare aspect. Me too. Because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Businesses should not be built around speed. They should be built for distance, right? You want a legacy business. And that's why the final analogy I'll leave you with is, you can take Usain Bolt, who's arguably the greatest short track runner in track and field history, put him in any marathon, he'll lose every single time. He's not built for distance. He's built for speed. So just understanding, I think, for the people that are watching or listening to this, just understand that there will be times where you're working more than you maybe would like, and you're going to be, quote unquote, grinding maybe a little bit more. That comes with the territory of growing a business. It's not always like that. It's a phase of the business that you're in.
Yes, I love it. So one of the big examples that's come up between the two of us on this show already, I want to honor for those who are building in today's world. We were doing podcasting. I was doing it for Video Power Marketing back in 2013 or so. We were doing a special guest hangout, we called it, right? So we had video involved in it. But nowadays, like, that's a big part of the norm, is getting yourself out there in the world and really distributing your voice to the masses. And it can be scary when you got haters, right, who talk bad about you. it can also be scary if you don't recognize the difference between somebody who's hating and somebody who's appreciating, but you're sensitive, right? You get defensive about it. It's like, you didn't say that Usain Bolt was a bad runner or did something bad with his life because he can't run a marathon. The news wants to manipulate that type of stuff. That's drama. That's exciting. Let's get clicks with that. You glorified the reality of the difference to support your analogy in relation to long-term business growth. I'd say Gary Vee was bad, for hustling and grinding. I'm saying, I think from my perspective of living in Uruguay for 2 years and seeing people like really suffer through poverty, that what he teaches and what he talks about with that is incredibly relevant for certain people in life. And and so when we're able to navigate, like it took us, I'm projecting now, and you don't project. That's another big thing that I really liked that you talked about, was rather than project and assume we understand where somebody else is coming from, right? You've learned to have the diplomacy to recognize the harmony in different perspectives. Did that come naturally for you as a leader and as a visionary, or is that something that you developed? I sucked at that badly. It took me a lot of development.
I think a lot of the things in business are developed over time, whether it's the foundations of what you've built or the lessons that are learned. And I think for me, I learned from a very early age, because I got into entrepreneurship when I was about 19 years old, and I'll be 45 in 2 months, less than 2 months, about 7 weeks. And for me, when you're thrown into the entrepreneurial ring at such a young age, it was such a benefit to me, because I wasn't, quote unquote, in the real world yet. Like, I've been psychologically unemployable since day one. So I never, even though I did graduate with an HR degree, I was going to college full time and running our family business full time. I was getting the best of both worlds. I was getting, the education needed to bring it back to my real world business, and vice versa. And I think that was kind of like that double doozy of a positive effect on myself as a person, but also as a professional. So I definitely faced more challenges at a younger age than a lot of people maybe would have. But that was to my advantage, because now when certain things arise in business, there are emotional hiccups where maybe I overreact, or, because I'm a very, I work off of gratification and making things that are right. And when there's a wrinkle, sometimes I have to do a check within myself. But a lot of those things that come up in business, that's the armor that you've been kind of building up to face. It's The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy. He's best known for The Compound Effect, but
or Success Magazine.
Yeah. But I mean, his that book, The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, it couldn't be any more spot on, because if you think about when you go to an amusement park and you're in line to get onto that roller coaster, and you sit down in that seat for the very first time, what's the first thing that the person running that ride tells you to do? Pull that safety harness down. And you do that because, much like business and life, there's going to be twists and turns. There's going to be ups and downs. Sometimes that roller coaster actually starts backwards, right? Right. You take 10 steps backwards instead of going forward.
Effect.
That's right. I mean, I remember, even there was a Dorney Park in Wildwater Kingdom, was the kind of like our local amusement park. It's
right
where I lived outside of Philadelphia. It was like an hour and a half drive. And they had it was the largest wooden roller coaster in the US at the time, called Hercules. And the way that the ride started was this just uphill climb. And it was a click, 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 click. And then you get to the top, it stops, and then it shoots you straight down. And again, that's how sometimes a lot of businesses go. It's that slow climb, right? And you reach that pinnacle, but the peak of one mountain is the valley of the next, and you have to just work through those things. And I like, bringing analogies to things, because I like to paint pictures. I was just having a call with one of our mastermind members, and I said, when you're doing your workshop, her and her husband are doing their first workshop, I said, don't under deliver on the value, give enough value, just like you would at a black tie event. You don't want to fill up on the appetizers because then you won't be able to eat the main course. So just give people enough of a sample size where when you're ready to open the doors for your offering, they're going to really want to dive in and want to eat everything that you're offering. So I think it's a lot of it is mindset and the view of what we have with it and how we go about it.
Love it. The mindset, the strategies to compound that, the fireworks show, right? It doesn't start with the grand finale. It's called a grand finale for a reason, right? And so if your business launches with the grand finale and then you don't have room to follow up on it, it sometimes torches your audience doesn't want to come back for the next show.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, that was cool, but I'm not coming again. It's over. So there are lots of realities that we should be preparing for as entrepreneurs in order to have the most effective presence and impact that we want to have. So let's dive into a dark subject on this. What is your worst leadership experience ever? It could be yours and it could be one you've experienced.
Worst leadership experience ever. That's interesting. I would say it was more on myself because so the backstory of how I got to be an entrepreneur was not the traditional one. My family went through trials and tribulations. My father, who's still one of my best friends, mentor, everything, made some bad business decisions early in his career. He ended up going to federal prison for 2.5 years. But he made sure that his ducks were in a row before he left. And he, with the help of my two grandfathers, purchased a failing health club in downtown Philadelphia. And when he went away, he turned the keys over to me. He goes, "You got to keep this thing going." And I was a sophomore in college. And there were a lot of ups and downs. But I think for me, this was not like to blame my dad, not to blame my mom. But I think for me, I didn't take the bull by the horn quick enough, because we had owned 2 gyms. We sold them for a really nice amount of money, opened up a third location. Most of everything was put into my name just because of my family's credit situation due to my father's past. It's just what you do as a family member, right? Like we were in it to win it. But I think for me, I was naive, but also I almost like leaned into the whole ostrich effect, where I just buried my head in the sand and I just kind of wished upon everything would kind of work itself out on its own. But it did end up leading me to have to file for personal bankruptcy in 2016 to kind of wash away all of the things that I had knowingly and unknowingly had done from a financial perspective with the business. So I feel that lack in self-leadership enabled me to be a better leader now for the team that my wife and I have, but also sharing that experience with the people in our programs gives them the path to go down to avoid the path that I went down. So I would say that was probably the worst leadership experience, my self-leadership experience.
That's powerful. It reminds me of my first co-founder. I was the junior co-founder by far. I mean, he had been building for 11 years a system called Restaurant Connect. And before our peak, about 1.5 years in, we're struggling and really pushing hard. I mean, we had some intense moments of what we were going through. And he told me a story about how when he was an executive chef at a James Beard restaurant, when it would get really busy and things would get crazy, he'd know that they needed onions. So he'd go in the back and he'd chop onions. And his business partner, Carl Bergermeyer, came in and just destroyed him and said, "What are you doing? Blah, blah, beep, 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 beep. Like, you should not be chopping onions right now. We need you on the front lines guiding things." He had stuck his head, right? Ostrich in the hole. So he's sharing this story with me. And then he goes, "Jackson, stop chopping onions." I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know he was going to spin it on me. I didn't have that level of self-awareness yet. But whether with the ostrich in the hole or with the person who goes in the back, again, these analogies, again, I'm all about them, man. Bring them to us. Let's dive into the best leadership experience you've had, though. What does that look like?
So I think for me, it was that moment where I decided to file for bankruptcy when almost 8 years ago. And I think for me, why I feel that was my best leadership experience is because at that point, well, number one, I knew I was getting a fresh start. Number two, I knew I would have a great story to tell. And number three, I would
Which you do.
also, yeah, and
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm like,
yeah,
you do. This is amazing.
and I would say the third thing is that I would create a level of relatability that a lot of other people couldn't, because to be a great leader, you have to be able to share everything. And I feel like in today's online marketing world, there are a lot of facades put up where everybody thinks business is all sunshine and rainbows. There's, you just start something and you're going to make a lot of money. And my wife and I really pride ourselves on keeping it real. Like we share the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, it's there. And I think for me, understanding that when someone comes into one of our programs that is in a great place, but they see it as that they're in a bad place. And then I kind of share my story of actually where I was just 8 short years ago. It helps them kind of turn the mirror around and say, you know what? There's people out there that could have it worse than me. And I think that's a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. But I need to be very open, honest, and transparent with people. If people are going to look up to me, it's just what Spider-Man says, right? With great power,
Uncle Ben.
yeah,
Comes great responsibility.
with great responsibility. I mean, and it's the key. So I knew that if I was stepping into this leadership role where I was influencing other people in a positive way, I couldn't hold anything back. I was not going to leave anything swept under the rug. I was going to showcase, highlight, and share it all, because the more relatable I became to my audience, the more they knew, liked, and trusted me. Not that I required that. It's just the natural human tendencies. People work with, buy from, and link arms with people that they know, like, and trust. And I pride myself on doing that every single day. I want to be that beacon of light for a lot of people that may be in a dark tunnel, and I want to let them know it's going to be okay. I've been through the ups and downs, but you know what? As Les Brown says, no matter how many times I get knocked down, if I can look up, I can get up, and that's one of my main mantras that I live by, and I literally stick to it every single day.
That's so powerful. I love this quote. To be a great leader, you have to be willing to share everything, the good, bad, the ugly. It's so worth doubling down on. It's it's hard to provide results to an entrepreneur who's not willing to lead. And so you're helping people catch that on the front end. Like, if you're going to get the results that you want, then you have to be willing to lead, and leadership does require that level of vulnerability. There is a context for those of you who are listening and you're ready to go tell your entire story, on live, that you have to protect your non-disclosure agreements, right? If you have those, you have to be willing to, you don't have to be willing to. I recommend being careful with what you say and how it might affect your personal familial relationships. You might want to discuss that with some people first before torching your mom, about whatever she did to you as a 12-year-old. There's nuances that you sometimes can't come back from with people who matter, but there's also, if you're in the middle of a mergers and acquisitions scenario, it might not be appropriate to reveal certain details about that. That doesn't make you not transparent. That makes you aware, intentional for your realities. I'm twice divorced. I wasn't sharing that publicly with everybody and anybody. And it wasn't that I was hiding it.
Me too.
Twice divorced, buddy. So you know that
Yeah, and I
don't
mean, just to interject, like no relationship in my life I never considered a failure. Um,
right.
so many positives from every single thing I've experienced. And again, it prepared me for meeting my wife. And
Yes.
so there's no negativity or ill will, or it's everybody has a different journey they go down. It's not a straight line. Everyone's life looks different. And again, I don't have a fear of judgment anymore. You know, I did for a long period of time. I cared what other people thought and how they felt. Um, and I even remember saying to my sister, you know, when I started dating again, I said, "Who's going to want to be with me?" You know, like I had two marriages that didn't work out. You know, like I have baggage, and my sister said, "Listen, people will love you for you," and
Yes.
it was a great piece of advice because again,
It's huge.
I could have lived by that narrative that like, oh, I'm damaged, I'm broken, you
And
know,
then you can find somebody else who has that damage, and then you end up both having destructive habits versus right healing,
yeah,
feeling out,
everything. Listen,
figuring out your value.
everything works out for everybody, and that's the mindset. Like everything happens for a reason, for a purpose, and it's that half glass full aspect.
Yeah.
Um, you know, just I want everyone to live the best life. We get one go at this, so let's make it our best.
That's right. Mine's abundant, man. I love the analogy, and I'm like, my glass is overflowing. Thank you. It is, and so when you can find that and see that, John Whaley was on this show. He's a phenomenal leader, and he talked about not the silver lining. He talked about all the, and we both came to the conclusion of like, wow, like our adversities have been our silver road,
Mm.
to the greatness that we've been able to accomplish and achieve. And the same is true for all you listening in. I just want to double down on what Scott said. If you want to lead people, then be vulnerable, because people won't know where you're leading them to, and they'll feel it. They'll know that they can't follow you, and they can't see your path because you're not sharing it with them. And naturally, that's going to lead them to have a very hard time connecting with you long term, unless they're also faking it until they make it. And you don't fake it till you make it. I think that's a lie.
Yeah, I have a really tough time with perfectionism
Mm.
because it doesn't exist, and I feel that social media has given people this false perception that perfection exists, meaning they have all these prim and proper pictures, and it's like their life is one big photo shoot, and
Right.
that's not
Those are the highlights.
reality.
Right.
It's the highlight reel, you know, and I you know, and then people share, you know, all these drunkalog posts where they're just writing on and on and on and on, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, who's got time to read all that? Like, I'm too focused on like what I'm trying to accomplish. Like, I
Yeah.
appreciate what people do and what they share. I just wish there was more honesty and there was
Yeah.
more openness and
Well, you're
more
inspiring it.
truth. Yeah, and
All
again,
we can
like
do. I gotta
I
ask
lo-
you real quick though. I don't want to lose a chance.
yeah,
I gotta ask, if this was the last chance you had to rock the mic and to share a powerful lesson with visionaries about your experience, from your experience rather, what would the final power lesson be?
that you know, this is something that I took away from an interview I did with a friend of mine, Cody Shewan, Canadian best-selling author of the book Everyday Legacy, and he shared this one impactful thing for me, and it has not left. And this was nearly like 4 years ago. And he worked in the funeral parlor industry, so he was surrounded by death for nearly 20 years. And he said to me, Scott, uh, you don't have to wait until you're gone for your legacy to be felt. You can leave it while you're still living. And that rocked my world. I mean, it just it basically it stopped me in my tracks because I realized that I had a responsibility not for how I show up for myself, but how I show up for the people that look up to me. And I want to make sure that I'm leaving my legacy right now so people can feel it, they can see it, they can believe it, and they can dream it themselves. And I think that that's the big lesson is that Your legacy, it's happening every single minute, every single hour, every single day that your eyes are open. You just have to realize it.
I love that. We're going to dive deep into that. We're going to feature a portion of your legacy while we do that. But in terms of helping visionaries, living your legacy now, how? What does that look like, Scott?
Well, I think for one is doing things that you actually love. And I can honestly say that everything that my wife and I get to do as co-founders of our business, The Time to Grow, and all the programs and the mastermind that we run, we get to help people build their legacies. And I think that's what it's all about. It's helping people earn more, to have more, to be able to do more. And I always tell people the money shows up when the impact is felt. So when people work with us, whether it's in any of our programs or, my coaching or consulting or our mastermind, the idea is to then pass down everything that we have learned and how we've become successful, to teach other people how to do the same thing. We are not an anomaly. We are not special. Yeah, we have some aspects of us that are very unicorn-ish. Like I do believe that we are very special people, myself and my wife, but there's millions of special people out there. Every single person listening or watching this, there's something about you that is very unique and special. And that can be highlighted, showcased, and put out for the world to see. And that really is that's what your legacy is all about is what can you do today to leave one person better. And that's what we really focus on.
What can you do today? So that's the write down of what can we do today to make one person better. And then you've got a system now where your ripple effect and of having all these episodes out there is doing that for multiple people at once. And it's so cool how I'm just bought into that concept. I drink the Kool-Aid. That's what I love.
Tastes good. It tastes good. Drink it all you want.
It's a great talk by a man named M. Russell Ballard, and he talks about honeybees. If you were to look up his name in that, you'd probably anybody would find the talk. And he talks about how the amount of honey that a bee provides to the hive on a daily basis is almost so small that it's almost insignificant. Yet we have all the honey that we have available to us because of these bees and their little work. And he relates it to the divine power of saying hello to somebody and how we often take that away from ourselves, the value of those small actions, rather than recognizing that that's exactly what we're able to do and supposed to do to make an impact in this life. And we shouldn't be upset or lose sight of the value of those moments just because of the highlight reels available on Instagram and everywhere else. So I'm paraphrasing by far from what he said, but that concept is, I hope my kids, when they do those little things, I hope that they are happy with themselves at the end of the day. And know that impact that they made, no matter how small it was, matters tremendously. Because it's not fun to live life when you're constantly threatening yourself or thinking that you're not of value to the world. And so you hit one more thing, and I'll end my soapbox on this. You talked about you guys knowing that you're unicorns, you and your wife. And we do live in a world where people think, oh my gosh, that's arrogant. No, Scott's confidence and his value of himself does not contradict or challenge your value. It's not a competition. Right? There can be 8 billion amazing people on this world. It's not about who's number one. It's about being, appreciative of the fact that you're beautiful, Scott's beautiful, I'm beautiful, etc. It's a whole world. We're able to come together and stop tearing each other's beauty down. It would be a beautiful thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think for me, it's two things. Number one, I know that we're special because we're getting people results. And I think that's makes me that value-added person. It's not about my success. It's the results that other people get. But my mom shared this story with me a few years ago that I never knew about. And she told me she was picking me up from preschool one day. And, she picked me up, she put me in the car, in the car seat or whatever. And the teacher followed me out. And the teacher pulls my mom aside and she goes, "I just got to share something with you." My mom's like, "Okay, is everything all right?" And she goes, "Yeah, everything's fine." She goes, "I just got to let you know there was something really special about that little boy." She goes, "I just wanted you to know." And I still get the chills when I even just talk about it, because my mom said she knew it, but to have an outside perspective, when I was only 4 and 5 years old, someone saying there's something really special about that kid, a sparkle in his eye, whatever it was. But that's every single one of us. I could go on and on and on. Every single one of us has a gift inside of us. And I'll go back to something that Les Brown said. Les Brown talks about how the graveyards around the world have some of the greatest songs, greatest movies, greatest inventions that will never be made, never be heard, never be seen, because they're buried with the people in those graves. And the last thing that I want personally is to go to the grave with my gifts inside of me. So I will make sure every single day that I'm sharing my gift in one way, shape, or form with those around me, to make sure that it's not going 6 feet underneath with me.
Vision Pros, you can subscribe to Scott Aaron's podcast, Networking and Marketing Made Simple, on any one of the major podcasting platforms. On the landing page as well, you'll have the opportunity to see what actions Scott recommends and what paths he's put in place to help you with your success. And if you have a desire to come on the show and share your own vision, in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a button that says Be Our Guest. If your vision is wholesome, if it's helping other people, and whether you're, Elon Musk or Joe Smith that nobody knows, that doesn't matter to me. I want the great visions on this stage. But Elon, you're always welcome, of course, as well. So with that said, guys, thanks for being here for the show. Have an excellent rest of your week building out your visions, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us